done a number of videos related to ancient Native American sites that are located in the eastern United States, in particular related to the Hopewell civilization, which I think relates to the Book of Mormon. So I've done some previous videos on some of the ancient cities that I think relate to the Book of Mormon, and some fortifications that relate to the Book of Mormon. In this video, I want to discuss one more site. It is what I think was a Mulekite burial and a Mulekite village, which later became a Nephite village. It is in the Moundsville, West Virginia area next to the Ohio River. It is also called the Grave Creek site and the Grave Creek Mound. And in the mound, there was a rock with writings on it as well, which I'll also discuss, for which the authenticity is disputed. So let me share the screen and we'll talk about that site. Okay, so first let's take a look at where this site is. As you can see, we have the eastern United States. On the eastern edge of Ohio is the Ohio River, where the Ohio River borders West Virginia, and the Moundsville site is right there on the Ohio River on the West Virginia side. Now, in this town of Moundsville, it is named after a very large mound called the Grave Creek Mound, and this is it right here. So here's the Ohio River with a border to Ohio. And then in Moundsville, we have this large mound. This is a Native American mound. This is called the Grave Creek Mound. And then currently there is a site with a museum and everything there. Okay, now let's take a look to learn about the Grave Creek Mound. If you want just basics from Wikipedia. As it says here, it currently stands 62 feet high, and it's about 240 feet in diameter. Now, it said that originally it was 69 feet high. Part of the reason that it is shorter now is that some things were built on top, and then also there were burials inside, and when they excavated from the top down into the burials, there was a collapse that happened because the burials were empty burial chambers. There were two of them in the mound, and it kind of collapsed down in. But anyway, so it was 69 feet originally, and then it also had a moat around it, which some of the other things we'll talk about. And it has been dated, as it says there, to the 250 BC to 150 BC time frame. To get a little more detail on it, at this West Virginia Encyclopedia site, sharing a little bit about it. Again, 57,000 tons of earth. That involves a very significant mound. Now, so it was up to 69 feet. Originally, it looks like the mound was built to maybe 30-ish feet, and there was a burial inside. And this burial, there was a burial chamber at the center of the mound, and in it was a man and a woman with some ornaments and things that were found. And then it looks like later, but not too much later, there was it was built on top, and there was a second burial up above. So whereas before it was maybe 30 feet or so covering the one burial, went up to about 70 feet and covers a second burial that was inside. Okay, so as it says here, originally there was a moat surrounding the mound, and the moat was about 40 feet wide, 4 to 5 feet deep, and there was sort of a passageway or causeway across the moat to the mound. They pulled some charcoal samples from an excavation. They did some carbon date testing on it. carbon date said 200 BC. Okay, and so they think that's why they're placing it in that 250 to 150 BC time frame. The mound was first found in the 1700s and then was first excavated where the burial chambers were found in 1838. So this was after the Book of Mormon had already been published. And two men, they first, let me go up to the mound. They first excavated by kind of going in from the side near the ground level, and they started just going straight through the mound. And as they got toward the center of the mound, they discovered what had been a burial chamber there, and then which had been partially collapsed. And then inside that burial chamber, they found, as I said, a man and a woman. Here, let's see, with a bunch of beads and see, actually both of them had beads, both the lower and upper. The Once they had found the bottom mound, they then went down from the top. So they went down from the top down and they hit another burial chamber up near the top. Now, interestingly, the burial chamber near the top, it had one man. He was described as a large man, but we don't have exact measurements on how large he was. But he was buried with a great number of beads. He had 5 copper bracelets on a wrist and lots of rectangular pieces of mica. Now, mica is translucent. It's almost like a mirror. It's in thin sheets, and they're kind of pretty. Now, here it doesn't say it, but the mica pieces had perforations, and they looked like the perforations were such that they would line up to be all held together. So all of these mica pieces kind of held together through through those perforations to hold it together. And then in that upper vault, they also, and this is in 1838, said they found what's called the Grave Creek stone, or sometimes called the Grave Creek tablet, and this has writings on it. And now the mainstream science at this point argues that the stone was a forgery, but there were a number of people who excavated the site at the time. It was believed to be real at the time, and there's still a lot who think it's real. I tend towards the view that it is real, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so here's this is a 1910 picture of the mound, kind of grown over a little bit. Here is the stone that was found. The stone itself has been lost. This is the only surviving picture of the stone. The clear looking thing was a plaster cast of the stone. So there are plaster casts of the stone, but the original stone was lost. It appears to have been lost through the Smithsonian. Although the Smithsonian says it never had it, there are people that said that they sent it to the Smithsonian. So it's unclear exactly where it was lost, but the original has been lost. Now you can see on the stone these writings that are on it. Now, again, the mainstream view of the stone is that it's a fraud, and the writing, there is no agreement as to what ancient language it is. There are some of the symbols of it are found in different writing types, many of which relate to the Phoenicians or Phoenician colonies. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Okay, so anyway, as it describes here, it was found in the 1830s. Henry Schoolcraft, who's a famous early explorer and geologist, and he settled places as they were going out west into Michigan and so forth. So he described the Grave Creek stone, and he wrote accounts with details about it. Again, there are some disputes as to the stone's discovery. There are two separate people who said that they were the one that discovered it. Regardless, it comes forth in that 1838 first digging into the mound. Now, on the inscription, as I said, there are various symbols on it. There are some who think that the symbols were just sort of gibberish. There are some who think that that they were pulled sort of randomly from some 1700s texts that showed ancient languages. Most of the symbols can be found through that. There are some that think that they contain a combination of a number of different languages. So there are symbols on it that match ancient Greek, Etruscan, Runic, Gallic, Phoenician, Old British, Celtiberic, some Hebrew. Now, many of these locations, though, actually connect to the Phoenicians. So the Mulekite theory for the mound is the one that I like best. I think that there is a possibility of the rock containing a sort of a Phoenician mix with other languages that the Phoenicians encountered. But anyway, in terms of people who have tried to translate the stone, none of those look very reliable. I'll show those to you. So there's a good article written by this lady. It's The Enduring Mystery of the Grave Creek Stone. You can find it at that web address, and she kind of goes into the stories about the how it was found, and then some of the disputes about the writings that are on there. So anyway, she gives a good account of it. I'll show you a couple of the attempts at translating it. Again, she has the arguments in there about those that think it's a hoax as well. There's in a little better clarity the inscription that's on the stone. Okay, so Barry Fell, he's kind of a famous, he's done a lot of the, he's a diffusionist. He believes that the Americas were um, discovered by other people long before Columbus, and he has looked at some of the ancient writings and he's provided interpretations on them and stuff. So he's kind of a well-known person, but this is the way he translated the stone, as basically describing that the mound was raised and the queen caused it to be made. And he says that it's Punic, which is Phoenician. Phoenicians did go into the Spain area along the coast, so he says Iberian Punic, and this is that translation that he came up with. There's another individual who came up with a different translation. Let's see where that is. It's down here. Okay, and this is a man named Harris. I can't remember the Stuart. Yeah, Stuart Harris there. Anyway, so he ended up convinced that the Grave Creek stone is the real thing. He thinks that so the Phoenicians traveled along North Africa as well, and one of the places that Phoenicians, or the Carthaginians, as they were later called, connected in was in Libya. And there, on the stone, there are a couple of runes that sort of look like a Libyan Phoenician combination. But anyway, he thinks that it's a legitimate, and this is the way he translates it. And so he has it as someone who calls himself a champion, and says that basically he describes that he got in a storm that struck us, and they're wrecked, and then he misses a woman back at home or something like that. And anyway, so that's his translation. Like I said, I don't think any of these translations are reliable. It's a language that's not verified, and it's a bunch of symbols that we don't really know what the meanings for some of the symbols were. But nevertheless, I thought that I would share that with you. Okay, now looking back at the site, it's more than just the large mound. There's that great big burial mound, as I said, carbon dated to 200 BC. I'll just note that in the Book of Mormon, where that puts us, is right about the time, just before or right at the time that Mosiah takes his people from the land of Nephi, and they go north and encounter the people of Zarahemla. And we know that. So in the Book of Mormon, King Benjamin, we know he gives his speech about 124 BC. Mosiah was King Benjamin's father. We don't have exact dates because it was probably in the lost pages from the Book of Lehi. But in the small plates of Nephi, in the Book of Omni, when it kind of runs through the account, it talks about the part where King Benjamin's father, Mosiah, was warned by the Lord that they should flee out of the land of Nephi. So those that listened to him left, and they then travel north, and they end up finding the land of Zarahemla. They encounter the people who we call the Mulekites in the land of Zarahemla. And they learned that Zarahemla, had come out from Jerusalem. Those people, the Mulekites, had come out from Jerusalem when after Jerusalem was conquered, or right around the time Jerusalem was conquered. And so, time-wise, this would put this occurring right in that between 200 BC to 150 BC time frame, with then Mosiah becoming the king over the combined Mulekites and Nephites, and then King Benjamin after him reigned for a while, and then King Benjamin gives a speech around 124 BC. So that Grave Creek mound with the burials was right about the time that the Nephites encountered the Mulekites in the Book of Mormon. Okay, now the mound with the ditch around it this is actually the one that's in Marietta, Ohio. If you've seen my previous video on Marietta, Ohio, so it had the bell, the conical shape, and then a ditch around it, and similar to what is in Marietta, Ohio as well, which if you saw my previous video, I think that was sort of, they call it, in the mainstream science, it's referred to as an Adena mound. Now I know that there's some people that think the Adena relate to the Jaredites, but actually time-wise, they relate better to the Mulekites, because in particular, when the Adena were significant, what I think is what they call the Adena, or sort of the tail end of the Jaredites, and then the Mulekites, and then when the Mulekites and Nephites join is when they call that the Hopewell civilization. Because in the archaeology, what they say is that the Adena were in the Ohio, West Virginia, this area here, 500 BC approximately, to around that 150 BC or so, and then are melded into the Hopewell, which they then say are about 100 BC to about 400 AD. And if you correlate with the Book of Mormon, that would fit with the Adena being the Mulekites, who are that 500 BC to about 150 BC culture, which then merges into and with the Nephites, which then becomes called the Hopewell civilization, from what they say 100 BC to about 400 AD. And so the time frames for the archaeology and for the Book of Mormon actually fit and match well if you, what I think is to correctly identify who is who there. Now, again, that conical mound with the moat around it, if you saw my video on Marietta, Ohio, is also something that is found in the Irish area anciently. They are called bell barrows. And there are some people who think that the Phoenicians had contact or were part of some of those ancient Irish people, and there's a potential connection then to the similar things being built in the Americas. Okay, so anyway, what I was saying, the mound isn't the only thing that was there. Uh, Unfortunately, it's all lost though. For the Hopewell sites, the ones that were not found until you get towards the mid 1800s, they all became much better documented because there were Squire and Davis and others had started the um, process of realizing the need to document, do surveys, and document what was there in terms of the Native American structures and what they had built. For the things that were found before that time, unfortunately, very little got documented. Just in the 1700s, late 1700s, and the very early 1800s, they didn't document what they were seeing very well. At best, you would get like a diary account that has a few lines describing what somebody saw. So we don't have a survey of the village or small city or whatever that was around that burial mound at the time. But there are some descriptions that indicated that there were this was the large mound down here. There were a number of mounds around it, including some larger rectangular ones. There were some circles made with stones, which could have been fortifications, according to one description. And then there was also a large octagon. Now, the large octagon shape fits the Hopewell civilization, particularly like the Great Octagon, which is Hopewell earthwork in the Newark earthwork area. So what I think you have happened here was the only thing that got preserved and carbon dated was the mound, which they dated to around 200 BC, which would have been a Mulekite time frame for that mound and burial. And then I think that the site later became a village which included the Hopewell Nephite earthworks and things that came later, including the large octagon and so forth. Okay, and I think that that pretty much wraps that up. Let me go ahead and stop the share there. Okay, so in summary, this is another site that may fit the Book of Mormon. To me, it best fits a Mulekite site that, because of the carbon dating, that fits that 200 BC time frame and fits the Adena civilization, which then merges and joins where you have the Hopewell elements later. To me, that clearly fits the Book of Mormon, where you have the Mulekites who are then joined by the Nephites and a change in their culture and civilization there. And so, anyway, feel free to leave your comments. I'm interested in your thoughts on it, and I encourage you to like and subscribe. Thanks.